Hi everyone, I'm here to talk to you about that. What did Sean call it? The dirty burger? So the dirty burger, as I told you at the end of class, represents sort of a metaphor for using sources in an essay. And it has three parts. You guys see I have the handout on the screen, the top bun, and then the quote part is the actual burger part of the dirty burger, and then the bottom bun. So I'm going to go through each parts really quickly, just so you guys have an overview of what this is all about. So in the introduction section of your handout, if you want to put some notes on there, I would recommend typing the word lead in, typing this in my little note over here, or also setup. And so when I say introduction to a quote or a paraphrase or a summary, in this case, this handout is talking about quotations specifically, but we can definitely apply this information to paraphrases and summaries as well. I'm talking about saying that so-and-so said this information. So you guys see here in the handout that I give you some options. So there's 4 options. You can tell the author's full name, give the title of the article or the book, give the author's area of expertise, or you can predict or kind of give some kind of hint or some foreshadowing for your readers so that they know what the quote is kind of about before they actually read it. And you're not going to use all 4 of these. You might use 1 or 2 together, but definitely not more than 2, because then you're sort of taking away from the source material that you're using. Rather than just getting to the point and getting to the source's information, you're kind of delaying it with too much of a lead-in or a setup. But that's what this introduction part means. And so if you look at the handout, let me just kind of scroll down to the bottom of the handout we read in class today. And if you look right here, according to Casper Grathwohl, President Dictionaries Division and Director of Global Business Development at Oxford University Press, this is a lead-in that I would say is probably a little bit too long, except to justify it, you know, this is the first option in that top bun of the dirty burger. And then we're getting some context, like who is this person? And there's so much information about this person because Philip, who's writing the essay on Wikipedia, you remember, he wants to justify his use of the source by showing what this guy's expertise is. So if I go back to the dirty burger, you guys see he's used author's full name and he gave author's area of expertise. And so that's, a little bit of a lengthy introduction, but notice that he does have one right here. So there's an introduction example in that essay we read today. There's also an introduction example here, but it's a little bit more vague. We know that this source, we looked at the in-text citations in class. We know that this source was written by a person with the last name of Chozick, and I would have to go to the Works Cited page to see the source's full information. But right here I know that, there's a bunch of sources just in general in this section of this paragraph, but we can see that Philip is introducing this source is about the collaborative nature of the source by saying there are many people who advocate for using Wikipedia. So you can see that, you can have a more general introduction too, but it's still noticing or pointing out to the reader, hey, here's who said this information. And then when we get the in-text citation, it's more specific who said this because, Philip is sort of paraphrasing that information right there and also putting in a little phrase, word for word in quotation. So kind of a mix of paraphrasing or summarizing and quoting in this part right here. So we've gone through the introduction part of the hamburger, and so you see the lead-in or the setup. So now let me scroll down to the quotation part and move, I don't know if I can move my little post-it, so I'll just leave it up here where it is. And I will just space down to give you some page numbers in the textbook that I think will be helpful for you to look at. So most of the specific quote examples, let me type that here, can be found in Philip's essay. And remember, I gave you only the first 2 pages of it. So if you turn to page 744 and 745, you'll get some examples of some of these other things. So we know that when we quote, we're giving the author's exact words. Okay, so go to page 740 2 and then turn, that's the first page of Philip's Wikipedia essay, and then turn to page 744, and then you see just anywhere on the page where there are quotes, we see that Philip is quoting using the author's exact words and then putting quotation marks around it so we know when things are being quoted. Just a reminder about what quotes are different from paraphrases and summaries, which we've practiced this semester. I didn't find any example brackets in Philip's essay, so I'll take you to a website in just a minute. But the second rule, so remember I told you these are the rules. So let me just put that in my note up here. Rules, MLA rules. Oops, I can't type this afternoon at all. Okay, so we have the MLA rules in the burger part of the Dirty Burger. So I would go and look at the specific examples in Philip's essay. I'm looking at 744 right now. I didn't find any brackets, but you guys can see what a bracket looks like. And they're generally used to replace words or to provide context inside of a quote. They are never used inside paraphrases, never used inside summaries. They're only used inside quotation marks. Ellipsis marks, I will show you those in a minute, but my handout defines them as 3 dots that indicate that you've dropped some words, that some words are missing from a quotation because you've decided you don't need the whole quote. Here, this quotation, the next item, quotation marks or indented spaces, 10 spaces of the quote is 3 or more lines long. If you go to page, let me get the space here, sorry, block quote or long quote, that's what this is called. If I have a quote that's more than 3 lines long, I'm typing in my paper, 3 lines long or more, it's called a block quote or a long quote. And you can see Philip do that on page 745. You see near the top of the page he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines that he's typed in from a source. And so there are some different rules for the long quote or the block quote. And those rules are explained in the little notation on the left-hand side that this is a longer quote. And you guys can see on that page that it's indented, that it doesn't have quotation marks around the passage because it's indented. And then the in-text citation is a little bit different. So maybe we'll look at an example of that in class, but just wanted to let you know you can also look in your textbook on page 745. And last but not least, we've already gone over the examples for the in-text citations. But remember, that's when you put a page number, or if it's a web source, the author's last name, or the article title inside quotation marks, or the website title in italics. We reviewed that in class today, and that's what I'm referring to here as the in-text citation. Okay, so now let's go down to the bottom bun, and I'll let you know that the rules for the analysis part of the Dirty Burger or the bottom bun are no rules at all. These are actually, again, some options. So I give you 1 option, 2 options, 3, 4, 5 options. These are choices. And the point is that after a source, after a quote, professors really like for you to follow up and tell why you're using the source. That's pretty much what these things do. So to analyze a source means to follow up. Remember when we did the response essay, I told you guys you had to have commentary. You can add commentary, or you can justify your use of the source. And I don't mean say, okay, I'm using the source because you told me I have to use the source. I mean, you want to explain how you interpret that quote, or analyze the significance of it for you. If it's something different than what the quoted passage says, you can extend the author's point to another situation or another example that you don't think the author has thought about. You can relate the quote directly to your own point. So, you know, some author says this about your topic, but then you wanted to point out something else as well. Or you can use quotes as examples. So, you know, and these are just 5 options for following up. So, the point of this is that your voice is more prominent in your research essay than the sources. So to always follow up after the sources so that your comments are longer than the original quote, so your voice is more prominent, as I've already said. All right, so again, I would check out some examples. You know, if you feel like it, read the rest of that Wikipedia essay, see if Philip does any analysis of his sources to point out his own reasons for believing that Wikipedia should be avoided as a source. And he probably does in certain places, but doesn't do it in all the spots. So I would make sure that when you're writing for Essay 5 and for future classes where you're doing research essays, that you follow these steps, because a lot of professors will expect you to know not only the documentation, the MLA documentation that I've gone over very quickly in this video, but also, how to set up the quote to lead in and say according to, and then the person's name or whatever, and then also to follow up after the sources. Really quick, before we go, are done with the video, let me go to the Purdue OWL website, and I'm going to do a search for brackets and ellipsis marks. And so you remember that, see if there's a direct link real quick. Yeah. You remember that Will brought this up in class, that in another class he was told to use a Purdue OWL, and it is a really good source. So let's see, there's some examples with brackets in them. I don't see an example here that says quote link. Let me go back to my search page and see if I can find a different. Just really quick, I know I'm going over the 10 minutes I promised you. Let's see, quotations. I'm going to the quotation page. La, 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 la. Just a second. No, that's not, hold on one sec. Formatting quotations. Here we go. Short quote. So here's another set of examples. I'll put this in D2L, but here's some more examples for how to do the lead-ins. You guys see there's some introductions to the quotes here, some example in text citations. Here are the rules for that block or long quote that I talked about that you can also see Philip Lau doing on page 745. Let's see, are there any brackets in here? Here's the ellipsis mark. So I'll refer you to, since our textbook doesn't have any really good examples of this, I'll refer you here to see how you can drop words out of your quote. But then you see here those 3 dots are inserted so that you're showing your readers that you've dropped lines from the quotes. These are ellipsis marks for a poem. We're not worried about that in this class, but I just thought I would point that out. Here's another use of ellipsis marks here. And I'm looking for brackets. I don't see any examples of this. So I'm going to stop looking and let you know. Let me just scroll up a little bit more and look a little more. Nope, I don't see any examples of brackets. So how about if I show that to you in class on Wednesday before I collect your Essay 5? And if anybody needs to use them, then we can add them before you turn them in. But brackets just usually are used to change verb tense. If the quote you're using doesn't match up with the way you're introducing it, and you need to change the verb tense, or you want to change a vague pronoun he and put that person's specific name, but you're quoting it and changing the word you change in the quote gets put inside the brackets so readers know that you changed the text. So that's pretty much how they're used, even though I don't have an example to show you right now. But we'll look at that in class on Wednesday. I look forward to seeing you guys at your conferences, and take care and have a nice weekend.